Guys, it happened. It is here. It is out now for us to consume. If you've been a regular listener of the show or a watcher of the show over the last 18 months, you'll know that I've been talking with the clubhouse leader in terms of appearances on the TUSC Pod, the legend, the ABS, the Aussie boxing scribe himself, Anthony Cox. We've hinted and we've teased at an unbelievable project that he has literally spent 7 years working on. It is here, right there, guys. The Brawl at the Sydney Opera House and other Aussie boxing yarns, all about diving into the rich history of Australian boxing through the 70s and 80s. Guys, I've got mine. I can't wait to read it. It's just been released today. So when you see this, I will have already read it. We'll be talking about it on the pod. We'll get Tony back on the pod to talk about it. Don't worry about that. But it is available globally on Amazon.com for you to all enjoy. The link to the book will be in the description of this episode, so click away. And if you do, not only will you be reading and consuming a fantastic boxing-related piece of literature, but you'll also be supporting one of the best guys in the sport globally. So available now, guys, The Brawl at the Sydney Opera House and other Aussie boxing yarns.
Let's go and move with life. Let it go, something new tonight. Let's go and move with life. Let it go, something new tonight.
G'day, guys. Welcome back to the Hit Out. So, as you guessed it, had a guest, fell through, we're solo. It's what we do on the TUSC. We're used to this by now, but damn, we're on such a great run of getting guests. But that's all right. I'm still working on something for next week after the fight, but this is the Hit Out. We're here for a Tszyu, Errol, Spence Jr. preview. What a card, man. Look, it's been sold to us as the greatest card ever assembled in Australian boxing history. Is it? I'm not sure. I would need to consult a historian, but what I do know is a hell of a lot of the fights that are on the card that are going to take place, some aren't taking place, we'll talk about that later, but the fights that are going to be taking place, I am super excited about. So let's get straight to it, guys. I had a heap of stuff worked out for the episode of the pod I was going to do today with the guest that will hopefully be down the track. So we're just going to stick to the fights this coming weekend, guys. So let's start at the start at the top. Errol, Spence, Tszyu. Where do we start? I don't know. There are so many questions in this fight that I'm sure all of you guys listening and watching this have also got going through your head as well. So we'll start with Tim. I'm a biased Aussie, and I've spoken about this before on the podcast in previous episodes where I really feel like the biggest storyline for me, or the most intriguing thing for me, is obviously how Tim looks, what style changes Jeff Fennick has been able to make, or that type of thing. But even more than that, it's the pressure on Jeff. There is so much pressure on Jeff from all, and, you know, if I frame it by saying, Jeff has come out and openly criticized both former teams that Tim has had in his corner, excuse me, I'm sure he would hit back on that massively and say he wasn't going out of his way to talk criticism. He was being asked by certain media personalities and he gave his honest feedback, because he always gives his honest feedback. So let's frame it the way that Jeff would want his criticism, quote unquote, to be categorized. And we'll say he was answering questions and he was being honest about what he thought about Tim's ability and the way Tim's team were looking after him and guiding his career. But that was criticism. He was very critical about the path Tim's career had taken, the style that Tim was implementing in his fights, and probably the training too. I don't know that for sure, but it seemed like there wasn't a part of Tim's career that Jeff didn't have some form of criticism for. And that's fine. Constructive criticism there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But, you know, in the years preceding Jeff taking the reins, excuse me, he had intimated that, you know, things would be different if he were at the helm of the training, of the management, if he was given full and total control. And now he has full and total control. He's had it seemingly for the last 2 or 3 months, and he's going to have it on fight night. So for me, the pressure is all on Jeff. I don't really see that much pressure on Tim. I really don't. You know, it's his third trainer in 3 fights. He's going up another weight class. This fight was meant to be at a catch weight of 158 pounds. As we all know, Errol Spence requested that the fight be up at the full middleweight limit of 160 pounds. Tim came out yesterday at the Grand Arrivals and spoke to our man, Brendan Bradford, on the scene. Shout out to BB, that he is planning on staying at 160 for the remainder of his career, or at least for the future of his career. So I see Tim in a new weight class as probably a good thing, a rejuvenating factor. As Tim said himself, he'd been making 154 for 10 years. That's got to be draining. So I see that as a little new lease on life. I see sort of training with someone he's so familiar with in Jeff as a bit of a new lease on life as well, guys, to be totally honest. Like, I don't really see there being a ton of pressure on Tim. Maybe I'm just being super biased and trying to look at this from the most parochial, biased eyes possible. But I think this is kind of freeing for Tim. He's had big fights. He's had world titles. He's lost big fights. He's lost world titles. Like, can it get any worse? Is this a final roll of the dice for him? I don't think so. I think he's too big in Australia, and more importantly, he's too popular to no limit, too important to no limit, I should say, for this to be his last fight if he were to lose. Can he lose? Absolutely. But yeah, I don't see there being a lot of pressure on Tim. I kind of feel like this is a free swing for Tim, to be totally honest. I think all the pressure is on Jeff. Imagine if Tim comes out and he gets bashed and he looks the same or possibly not as good as he looked with his previous trainers. My God, that is a bad look for Jeff. And Jeff's kind of come out with some comments here and there saying, look, he's happy with his career. He's happy with everything that's gone on. He's successful. The team's successful. Tim's successful. What happens on fight night, what happens in the ring can't be controlled, all those type of things. And that's 100% true. And who am I to disagree with him? But, when there's been that much criticism leveled at Tim and his previous two teams, and the intimation was that if you were at the helm, things would be different and Tim would be performing better, there is pressure to deliver. There really is. So I feel like all the pressure is on Jeff. This is such an interesting side element, which is something that I normally don't focus on ever, really. I just worry about what happens in the ring. But for me, that is the most fascinating angle of the fight that's going to take place on Sunday afternoon, Australian time. It's that pressure on Jeff and the way, not necessarily Tim getting the win for me, but the way Tim performs. I'm not expecting wholesale change, but I am expecting there to be those defensive deficiencies to be tightened up. And I'm expecting a little bit more patience, ironically, because Jeff wasn't that type of fighter. But, like if you were going to implement changes in Tim's style that have cost him in fights, what's cost him? His over-aggressiveness and his defensive holes, and probably his punch selection, not throwing the wrong punch at the wrong time and getting caught. Probably those three things for me are the three biggest things that, look, I don't know. Anyway, Jeff Fennick's forgotten more about boxing than I will ever know, 100%. I'm not trying to make the impression that I know more than him. And I'm sure there's a million details that he's identified that I'm not even capable of seeing or understanding. But for me, those would be the three things, the three simplest or the three most obvious things that I would want to see changed or improved upon in Tim's style. So they're going to be the three things I'm looking for. Can Jeff do it? Absolutely. Why can't he? He's the best fighter we've ever had in this country. Well, that's up for debate, actually, but at least to my eyes, and in recent times from, say, like 1940 onwards, Jeff's the best we've ever had. He's the most successful we've ever had. He's trained world champions in the past. He's, experienced the sport in every possible level. Like, who would I be to doubt his abilities as a trainer? And I'm not going to. I'm going to believe that Jeff can implement those improvements in Tim's style. And I think for that reason, we will see a better version of Tim. But now let's talk about Errol Spence. What does this guy have left? I mean, that's the biggest question. Multiple car accidents, eye surgeries. He got absolutely flogged by Terence Crawford 3 years ago. The fight was at a catch weight. Again, as we spoke about, he's bumped it up 2 pounds. She's gone from 147 to 160. The last time that I can remember a reigning world champion at welterweight skipping junior middle and going to middleweight was Jeff Horn the first fight against Zarafa, and that ended absolutely disastrously for him, unfortunately. Great night for Zarafa, though. So, will history repeat itself? Is this going to be a disastrous weight jump for Errol Spence? We shall see. Obviously, Jeff Horn and Errol Spence are many, many different differences in style and pedigree, if we're being totally fair. But, there's both these guys, Tim and Errol, are fighting their first fight with a new trainer. Errol Spence is no longer with Derek James. He's now with Ronnie Shields. And in a recent interview with Andre Ward, Errol came out and as all fighters do, and I'm not saying he's lying, it always happens. There's so much more behind the scenes that we just don't know about and we never get to see. And Errol spoke about how that training camp was for the Bud fight, the Terence Crawford fight. And if what he said is true, it sounds like the most... there couldn't possibly be a way that Errol Spence could be less prepared for Terence Crawford. Apparently they didn't even spar. Or they didn't spar for like 6 weeks before the fight or 8 weeks before the fight or something like absolutely alarming. Andre Ward was like flabbergasted in his chair when Errol was saying this type. Apparently they just hit pads. There was no game plan, so to speak, at least according to Errol from my interpretation of what he said. It was just a absolutely bizarre recount, if that is in case, in actuality, what happened throughout that training camp, or lack of, we should actually say. So, obviously, if that was all to be true or even partially true, Errol has moved on to now Ronnie Shields, a massively well-respected, super experienced trainer. I'm sure the preparation has been better than what it was for the Crawford fight. But again, we hear fighters say all the time they need a couple of fights to really settle into the new training ideology and get used to having a new voice in the corner on fight night when the lights are the brightest. So, both guys are in a massive fight. Like, if either guy loses, this could potentially be the end of their careers, but they're in a massive fight with big stakes, not necessarily world title level stakes, but career defining stakes with a new trainer for the first time. So that is such an interesting wrinkle. Now, what made Errol great in his prime, pre-car accidents, pre-eye surgery, pre-Crawford loss, pre-inactivity, all that type of thing. What made Errol great? For me, it was the jab and his relentlessness. He was he was relentless with the jab. He set everything up with the jab. And I've always sort of pushed back on people when they say, don't jab a southpaw. I'm like, why not? Why not jab a southpaw? The southpaw jabs, and Errol is the perfect example of that. He never put the jab away. Everything was off the jab, and it broke guys. He broke guys with the jab. Now, if we're to see at middleweight again, Errol at his best, I'm expecting to see that jab pumping. And I probably am a little bit of an outlier here in that in the Tony Harrison fight with Tszyu, I actually thought Harrison was doing way better than most did. Everyone had Tim up pretty big at the time of the stoppage. I think I only had Tim up by a round. Or maybe I had it even. Was that a 7th round stoppage or an 8th? I can't remember. Whatever it was either even or Tim up by 1. Or maybe even I had Harrison up by 1. I'd have to go back and check my notes. But I thought Tony Harrison was doing such a great job. When he wasn't getting rocked and caught, he was doing such a great job controlling the action with the jab. Tim is square, Tim's wide, and Tim has holes. And I think he can be controlled with a jab. Now, Tony Harrison's orthodox, Errol Spence is a southpaw, but the way Tim holds the left hand, the jab's going to be coming over the top of it, unless Jeff has kind of employed a much more tightening up and a more bladed sort of traditional stance for Tim. I still see that same opening there, that same opportunity. And what does Errol do naturally great? He throws the jab and he throws it often. I could really see that giving Tim a few problems here. But look, guys, they're just a few observations I've made and kind of setting the scene with the question marks that I've got in my head. There are so many more, but we've been talking about this fight for about 10 minutes. So I want to move on to the rest of the card because it's such a really good card. And I'm actually more excited about a couple of other fights on this card too. But I would say that, those are the biggest question marks I have for that fight in particular. And I can't wait to see what happens on fight night. In terms of making a pick, I have no clue, man. This is a genuine 50-50 coin flip, especially for those questions I just outlined that I have. If I was going to pick anyone, I'd pick Tim, but purely just because I'm a biased Aussie, I have no idea. It seems to me like if I had to somehow try and figure something out, I'm just going off the top of my head, I'd be like, Errol on points, Tim's got to stop him. Just purely on the work rate of a prime Errol and the way that he throws the jab and breaks guys with it. I feel like if Tim's going to get it done, he's probably going to lose the majority of the rounds if he gets outworked in that way. Presuming Errol has the durability that he had at welterweight and in his prime. Again, that's another question mark. What's going to happen when Tim puts one on his chin, which I'm sure is going to happen at some point in this fight and probably within the first couple of rounds. We're going to find all those things out. But if it's prime Errol, prime Tim, take all the question marks away, I would say Errol on points or Tim's got to stop him. I'm probably going to go Tim just because I'm a biased Aussie. But yeah, not necessarily the result of this fight is what I'm interested in. It's getting the questions to all the answers that I just outlined in it. So whatever way the fight goes, I can't wait to see the answers to all those questions. So yeah, love this fight. Wasn't that pumped up for it. Only really got pumped up for it the last week or two, which is kind of a theme happening with me lately. There's so much going on. It takes me a couple of weeks to like really, once the fight's a week or two away, then I really start thinking about it and I get pumped for it. So this one was a bit of a sleeper for me, but now we're a couple of days away. I'm pretty excited. So let's see what happens, and fingers crossed we get some answers to those questions. But guys, we also had what was at least on the poster billed as the co-main event, Jamal Charlo coming over to Australia to fight Koen Mizudio, who was going up 2 weight classes and going to be bridging a massive gap in class and experience and seemingly still ability. That fight has no longer taken place. Jamal Charlo was denied a visa. He could not get access into the country, and that fight is off. I believe No Limit looked around for another opponent for Koen Mizudio to keep him on the card. They couldn't find it. So again, coming from our mate Brendan Bradford, according to him, Koen Mizudio is off the card and no fight will be taking its place. So yeah, this was the fight I was the most, I would say, is least interested, the right way to put it. Probably not. The fight that I was most certain of the outcome, I will say that. And I don't think that's being disrespectful to anyone. This was a massive, gigantic step up for Koen Mizudio. He'd never fought anyone at this level. He'd never fought at super middleweight, to my knowledge, especially against a former world champion. Everything was against Koen Mizudio. If we take the Aussie bias out of it and we look at fighter A and fighter B, this was just a straight up tune-up for the bigger, more experienced former world champion that wasn't expected to go more than 1 or 2 rounds, at least in my eyes. But I was looking at it from the point of view of this is Koen Mizudio's Rocky moment. Like upsets happen. That's why we love this sport. It could change his life and career, and this was a gigantic opportunity, and I'm sure he trained the house down and he invested heavily in his training camp and paid his sparring partners and did all the things that we expect a professional like Koen Mizudio to do in the biggest opportunity of his fight. I'm sure it was the biggest payday he was ever going to get. It was the biggest platform he'd ever fought on against, by far and away, the biggest, most experienced opponent he's ever had. This was an unbelievable moment for him. Win, lose, or draw. This was like something that very few people in life and in sport ever get to experience, and he was only a couple of days away from experiencing it. And unfortunately, due to the visa not being issued to Jamal Charlo, the fight's off, and it's just such a shame for Koen on all levels. Look, there's the other way we could look at it is, he dodged a massive bullet because there was a possibility he was going to get brutally hurt. But, if we look at it from the other way, he also lost his opportunity at that Rocky story. He lost his chance at that fairy tale, and it's a fight and anything can happen. And Jamal Charlo is not exactly, there's question marks around him. We don't know what type of form he was in coming into this fight either. So it's a massive shame. And look, I just like how insane is boxing? How does this happen? How do you have a fight announced for 2 or 3 months, whatever the time frame was, and then days from the fight, one of the fighters can't get access into the country? Like, I would imagine the number one thing, not even in boxing, not even in sports, just in logistics, if you're getting multiple people from multiple countries all into one area before the weigh-in, before the fight, before the press conference, before all that can happen, you need to get them all into that one spot. So I would imagine the visa and making sure that the people from overseas could get access into the country that the event was taking place in would be of paramount importance in the negotiation process. I don't know if that's TGB's fault. I don't know if it's Al Heyman's fault. I don't know if it's No Limit's fault. Hey, it could be the Australian government's fault. It's not like our government could friggin' organise a piss up in a pub, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know who's to blame for that, but that is just a diabolically rookie error from whoever dropped the ball on that one. And unfortunately, Cohen's the one sitting on the sidelines and, not getting that paycheck and not getting that moment. It's such a shame. But anyway, that fight's not happening. So, shout out to Cohen. He said yes. He took the opportunity, he trained his guts out for it, and he's not being rewarded with the opportunity to have a crack, which absolutely sucks for him. But hopefully No Limit can find something for him in the future. So, guys, now we go into what I'm assuming will be the co-main event. Now, the order on BoxRec can sometimes be a little bit up and down, but considering this fight just got reallocated, I guess, as a WBA world title eliminator at super featherweight, we've got Australia's own Liam Mr. Damage Wilson taking on former two-weight world champion Cool Boy Stephen Fulton. God, this fight is so good. No one's been talking about it. I am so pumped for this fight, man. So we've got Cool Boy Steph coming over from America. Now, his last fight, he lost to O'Shaquie Foster, which was supposed to be at super featherweight. Funnily enough, Cool Boy Steph, who was a world champion at super bantamweight, he's only lost to Naoya Inoue for that undisputed fight in Japan a couple of years ago, missed weight at 130. The fight ended up being for an interim lightweight title against O'Shaquie Foster, and it really wasn't a great performance by Stephen. Cool Boy, he looked sluggish. He looks like, I don't know if he got injured during training camp and he just didn't have the ability to do the movements that he had to do to burn the calories to lose the weight. I'm not sure, but he looked sluggish. He looked really small with the weight. It was just a very lackluster performance by Cool Boy. So, funnily enough, I thought he would go back down to featherweight. He's not. He's doubling down. He's staying at super feather. Actually, it's going to be his first time at super feather. He's never fought at the weight because he fought over it last time. And he's fighting a big dude. We know Liam Wilson well. We've spoken about him on this pod so much. Now, the thing I love about this fight and I've said this about, and I feel like Aussies are always in this position. And I don't know why, but it just always seems to be that we're in this position where our guys are going up against these huge punchers on the world level. And, I've said it on this pod, and people I've had on the pod have said it about our fighters too. It's like, the mindset for us going up against these guys is, man, our bloke has to be perfect for 36 minutes because he can get hurt at any moment by this huge puncher, Well, this is a fight where I feel like the roles are completely reversed from the norm. Cool Boy Steph has to come out and box a perfect 36-minute fight to stay away from Liam Wilson because Liam Wilson's going to be throwing bombs and he can punch. So we've actually got a role reversal for a change, which I feel like is really interesting. So, Cool Boy was not a big puncher at 122 pounds. He wasn't a big puncher at 126 pounds did he even have more than one fight there? One or two fights at featherweight. And he certainly wasn't a puncher in his last fight against O'Shaquie Foster. Cool Boy's not a big puncher. He's a boxer. That's where all his success comes from. Now, Liam can box. Can he box as good as Cool Boy? I don't think so. But Liam can box. And our whole thing we've been waiting for Liam to do his whole career, and he's sort of found it a little bit in spots, but very similar to Tim, he gets over-aggressive, and when he gets over-aggressive and when he tries to force the knockout, that's when he gets caught, and it's when he looks vulnerable, and it's when he goes the distance with guys he probably should be stopping. It's when he boxes and lets the knockout happen and lets his boxing ability set up those devastating shots. That's when he has his cleanest knockouts and his biggest level of success. Now, we've been waiting for Liam to find that blend, or at least I have. I've been waiting for it for fights and fights and fights now, and I don't think he's ever quite found that correct, or the most effective ratio, I should say. I don't know what the correct ratio is, but what the most effective ratio is for him between boxing and being super aggressive and throwing those huge shots out of nowhere. So for me, I feel like we're never going to get that answer. I don't think that's how Liam rolls. He's a guy that loves getting in fights. We've seen it time and time and time again. And whether he wins fights being too aggressive or he loses fights too aggressive, I think that's who he is at this point. I'm not sure how old he is. I imagine he'd be late 20s, possibly even 30, maybe early 30s. But at this point, I don't think we're teaching an old dog, new tricks. I think Liam is going to be what he's going to be. He's going to be what he's always been. He's going to box a little bit, and then he's going to try and smash this guy's head in. That's what he always does. So I actually love this fight and this particular matchup for Liam because he's in with a guy that, respectfully to Cool Boy, I don't think Cool Boy can hurt him. I think he can outbox him, but I don't think he can hurt Liam. Now, historically, when Liam's got too aggressive, all his losses are by stoppage. Oscar Valdez got too aggressive, got stopped. Navarrete got too aggressive, got screwed by the ref as well. But anyway, got too aggressive, got stopped. Joey, who was the Filipino jawbreaker that stopped him? Joey Nagoy? I have to look that up. Got too aggressive, got stopped. Corrected it in the rematch, fair enough, but when Liam loses, he loses by stoppage, and he loses by stoppage because he gets too aggressive. I think Liam can afford to be too aggressive here because I don't think Cool Boy can hurt him. I don't think he can hurt him to the point where he's going to knock him out like the other guys did. So in terms of like it's still a very difficult matchup because you've got to be able to catch Cool Boy. Now that's hard. That's really difficult. Only Naoya Inoue has been able to do that so far. So that is one hell of a problem in itself. But if Liam can still, he needs to box more than he brawls here, I believe. Even though on another episode I did say, fighter, boxer, boxer, fighter, but still I think Liam, if he's too reckless, if he's too aggressive, he's going to be telegraphing too much and he's making things too easy for Cool Boy. He's still got to box. He's still got to mix it up. But I feel like this is a fight where his natural characteristics will come out, which he is going to get over aggressive and he is going to go berserk at points because he loves getting in fights. So I think this is a matchup with Cool Boy that you can do that in and get away with it. Now, I see this fight being very close on the paper because Liam's big. He'd be way bigger than O'Shaquie Foster, I'd imagine, in frame. Liam's been in wars. He's tough as hell. Cool Boy's a better boxer. I feel like if it was to go the distance, is it 50-50? Probably, but I think where the advantage for Liam lies is in potentially getting knockdowns or even a stoppage outright. So I'm going to go, Cool Boy's tough. Damn it. Let's have some fun. I'm going to go Liam, Mr. Damage by round 8 TKO stoppage. I think he's going to overwhelm Cool Boy. I think the weight's going to be too much for Cool Boy. Like Liam's fighting at super featherweight. How the hell does he make that weight? He's massive, man. It's insane. He should probably be at 140, to be totally honest. He's a massive guy, so I feel like he's just going to impose his will and wear down Cool Boy. But credit to Cool Boy for taking the fight. Like, Stephen Fulton is a friggin' warrior, man. Absolutely. So I can't wait for that fight, guys, but I'm going Liam Wilson, and I like the matchup for a change. So let's move down, guys. So I'm not 100% sure what's going to be underneath that. So I'm just going to make up my own order, which is of the fights, which is basically going to be the next fight, which I'm most pumped for, which is probably the fight I'm most pumped for on the entire card. Paulo Acuso is back against a 12-0-1 Dominican Republican Luis Antonio Tejeda. Guys, this is a fantastic fight. I haven't seen or heard or read much about this, anyone talking about it, but man, this is such a great fight. Since Paulo's been back with No Limit recently, is it still going? The last two fights, he was with some relatively underwhelming opponents compared to the high water ceiling mark of his career, I think is fair to say, and respectful to them. He hasn't, I think he went 6 rounds with the Kazakh and blew out the did he fight Kitty Pong Ho Hang or something like that? The guy blew his knee out, actually. So Paulo didn't even have to blow him out. He blew his own knee out in the first round. So, but I think before that, Paulo was off a little bit. He'd had some time off. So look, he's been back. He's had 2 training camps under his belt, fought relatively quickly back to back, and now they've stepped him up. This is great matchmaking. I will pot No Limit every single time they deserve it, and God, do they deserve it sometimes. But this is a great fight, and they've made a great match here. So Luis Antonio Tejeda, like I said, 12-0. He's actually 12-2. He has lost 2 fights before, but they were in the IBA, which I'm not even 100% sure what the go is with that. I think it's like some sort of, I don't know, organization that kind of blends the amateurs and the pros, and it doesn't get recognized on BoxRec, and a lot of jurisdictions around the world, I guess. So it's those two fights he had, even though they were both 8 3-minute round fights with pro rules and pro gloves and pro referee and all that. It was a pro fight. For whatever reason, they're not recognized on his record. So he lost the first IBA fight that he had to a Kazakh whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. He lost an 8-round decision. And then in his next fight in the IBA, which was only 2 or 3 months later, he fought 2-time Olympic Cuban gold medalist Arlen Lopez and got comprehensively beaten, and they stopped it. He didn't hit the deck to header. He's tough as hell, this dude. But he smashed his nose to pieces and it was bleeding. And so he never hit the deck, but they stopped it with a badly broken nose. But Arlen Lopez is a freak. But straight after that fight, guys, so he would have been undefeated. He's lost 2 fights back-to-back in the IBA, got throttled pretty good by Lopez. His next fight, he fought a 19-0 guy back in the Dominican Republic, someone Sanderson. I wrote his name down. What was his name? Let me just check that because I need to get this guy's name right because this was a great fight. This was on YouTube. Sanderson Diaz, excuse me. He fought him. Tejeda got knocked down. He knocked Sanderson down. Mate, it was a back and forth war. Absolutely ridiculous fight. Where was it here? I'm trying to write what round it was, but Tejeda got the stoppage anyway. But I thought that was so reflective of him as a fighter that a lot of times when guys get stopped, they go in their shell. Arlen Lopez outclassed him, outfought him, beat him up, brutalized him, wobbled him multiple times. Some guys, they can change their style. They can become more conservative. They can try and limit openings. And by doing that, they become a little bit more passive. They get hit, the alarm bells ring, they shell up. That did not happen at all to Tejeda. He was in a full-blown war a couple of months later with 19-0 Sanderson Diaz and got the win in an absolute slugfest. It was unbelievable. And there is a lot of craft to Tejeda as well. Even though he hasn't had a lot of pro fights, I'm assuming he must have had a pretty big amateur career, which I haven't checked, but he has that sort of veteran savviness, if you know what I mean. He flirts with the rules a little bit when he needs to here and there. He also, interestingly enough, Tejeda beat Popeye Rivera in March of 2024. He was 25-1 at the time. We will know Popeye because he recently just lost to Ben Whittaker. Ben Whittaker stopped him in, I think, 2 rounds. And Tejeda has a relatively recent win over Popeye. So that gives us a pretty good idea of the level that Tejeda's at, which is another reason why I love this fight for Paulo. This is fantastic. It's going to be so much more meaningful for if he is to get this win for the foreseeable future in his career. And it is an actual measurable rung on the ladder. We can see where Paulo's at. All we've really got to go off Paulo is that win over Unieski Gonzalez a couple of years ago, but that's a couple of years old now. Paulo was out in the wilderness a little bit, but now he's back, and this is a fantastic fight. I'm sort of rambling, guys, but when I ramble, that's how you know I'm pumped. But, what else did I have here? Bekzad Nerd Orlatov. That was the Kazakh that he fought in the IBA, whose name I could not remember, and I've probably just butchered. Also interesting to note, too, those fights were at 80 kilos even, so a little higher than, I think light heavy 79.8 or something like that. So, yeah, they kind of have their own weights in the IBA too. So maybe that's why they're not fully recognized in the pros and on records. But yeah, guys, this is a brilliant fight. In terms of style, Tejeda, this is going to sound real weird, and I may look like a total idiot, but if I just watch a silhouette of Tejeda, he reminds me of Marcus Maidana. He really does. He's got really long arms. He's really aggressive. He falls in with his shots. And when he overcommits and he falls in with his shots, he kind of, I don't know if it's deliberate or not, but he sort of switches stances, throws again, falls in, switches stances. So he's always loading hips and trying to get body weight between punches. I don't know. If they were 2 silhouettes next to each other, he just reminded me of Marcus Maidana a little bit. So I feel like this is going to be a really fun fight. He's definitely going to come forward and go after Paulo, which we know how good Paulo is on the back foot and how good his eye is in his counter-punching ability. So this is a fantastic fight, guys. I didn't even talk about Paulo because I don't even kind of really need to. That was just all about Tejeda. This is a great fight. I cannot wait for this fight now. I'm so pumped. It's probably the fight I'm looking forward to the most, to be totally honest. So that's going to be a banger. Guys, Callum Peters is back in with Ivan Ricardo Actis, who is 13-0 from Argentina. This will be Ivan's first fight outside of Argentina. Now, I had never heard of Actus, so I had to do a little bit of research on him. I think it's like with these Australian previews, we don't even really need to talk about the Aussies because we've seen them their whole careers. We know what they bring to the table. You know, Callum Peters is just coming off the career best win over Joshawn James, which again, shout out to whoever's doing the matchmaking at No Limit. A brilliant matchup. I thought possibly a little bit too aggressive. You know, I wouldn't mind a little bit more of a conservative step, like probably I'm putting the cart in front of the horse, but I'd probably go Ivan Actus and then Joshawn James. They're going Joshawn James and then Ivan Actus. So, but credit to Callum. He got through it, went through a little bit of adversity through the middle. I think he's going to come out and be much, much better for it, but we know where Callum's at. So Ivan Actus, interestingly enough, is a southpaw. He's listed 1 centimetre taller than Callum on BoxRec. He turned pro at 26 years old. So they're the biggest notes I made about Ivan Actus. Watching a couple of his recent fights, the thing that struck me, and when I read that he turned pro at 26, I was like, okay, that kind of makes a little bit of sense because I don't know this for sure, but to me, he looks like a guy that picked up boxing late. You know, when you can see guys that, no, maybe don't frame it like that. I should frame it in, like, when you watch a fighter that you can tell and and who looks like has been boxing since they were a kid, like they've been boxing for 20 years. You can tell. You can see it. There's a way they move. There's a fluidity that you only get when you've done this for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours and years and years and years. Ivan Actus doesn't have that. He's big. He's aggressive. He keeps his hands up. His elbows are a little wide, but he throws hard punches. He pushes with the jab. The right hook, and the right hook to the body in particular is pretty good. He gets nice leverage on that, but he looks to me like a guy who picked up the sport late and is playing catch up. Now, that's not to take away anything from him, but that's what it looks like. So to me, I could be totally wrong. Maybe that'll come out during fight week, but we shall see. But he's a big physical guy. He's really aggressive. If he were to fight Joshawn James, I think Joshawn James would handle him quite easily. I think Joshawn James is a better fighter than Ivan Actus. I think Joshawn James was able to ask questions of Callum that Ivan Actus won't be. I think Callum's going to win big here. I think he's going to win pretty easy. I see too many holes in Actus. I think Callum's going to do what Callum does. He's going to come out quick. He's going to put heaps of volume on these guys. He's going to change. I think it's going to be so easy for Callum to turn angles on Actus. Much easier than it was for him to turn angles on Joshawn, which especially early in that fight, like Joshawn made great adjustments and started turning with Callum. But early he was a little bit bamboozled. Well, if Joshawn James is a bit bamboozled by the angles of Callum Peters, I definitely think Ivan Actus is going to be. So I actually like this fight pretty big for Callum. But it's international experience against an undefeated guy from another country. I mean, this is still great matchmaking. Again, in terms of the ladder of progression, I would have liked to have seen Ivan Actus get that win, then fight a guy like Joshawn. But the fact that Callum's gone, Joshawn and then down to Ivan Actus, at least in my estimation, I mean, is just a credit to Callum and his ability. And I'm expecting to see a better version of Callum than we saw in the Joshawn James fight too. So, guys, that should be, it's always good to see Callum out, and he's staying busy, which is fantastic as well. And guys, the fight, I believe, will be opening up the pay-per-view. Paul Fleming is back against, I believe, the reigning Australian lightweight champion, Ahmed Redder, but that title is not listed on BoxRec. So maybe he relinquished it, or maybe they're going for a regional title. I don't know. But Ahmed Redder, guys, I didn't know what to make of Ahmed Redder until relatively recently. Like, he had the fight with Bruno Tarimo, but Bruno was got the win over Bruno Tarimo too. Bruno's pretty small at that weight. Let's see. Maybe it's been updated. I just want to see if they've listed the Australian title. They have not. I wonder why. And then we saw Ahmed Redder in with Wayne Telepe as well, the 3-1 Wayne Telepe getting the 6-round stoppage there. So again, I feel like this is a pretty big jump up for Ahmed Redder. Paul Fleming's definitely towards the end of his career, if not sort of a couple of fights left, something like that. We thought he was done after Charlie Suarez. He came back up a couple of weights, had the draw with Jake Wiley at 140, didn't he? Let me click on that. I'm pretty sure I had a draw. Oh, sorry. Yes, that was his last fight, of course. Yeah, lost to Charlie Suarez, took 2 years off, and then came back and had the draw against Jake Wiley. Yeah, 140 in his last fight. Now he's back at lightweight against Ahmed Reda, a much better weight for Paul. All the experience on his side. For me, what does Paul have left? This is a classic young bull against an old lion. Who do we favor? Is Ahmed Reda going to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and tame the older guy and outwork him, which seems to be Ahmed Reda's path to victory? Or has Paul Fleming got more tricks up his sleeve? I kind of think he does. I like Paul Fleming in this fight. Always take the boxer over the fighter, and in terms of pure boxing skills and ability, it's Paul Fleming all day. If the young man can't the younger, bigger man too, we should mention in Ahmed Reda, if he can't outwork Paul, I like Paul pretty good here. I think Paul's going to get his first win since, let's have a look, 2022, Jackson John England. Damn, that was a great fight. That was on Stan Sports, wasn't it? Damn. Paul Fleming has not had a win since. He's only had 2 fights since, but yeah, March 2022, Jackson John England, which, God, that was a good fight. Jackson, that was really close too, from memory. Lost by TKO in the last round to Charlie Suarez, took 2 years off, draw with Jake Wiley. Damn, there you go. Paul Fleming. What a legend. What else is there, guys? So there's only the other fight there is Tina Rahimi's pro debut against Sasha Ryan Dryden. Dryden. I wonder if there's any relation to Chiron and Darkon Dryden. Who knows? I've never seen her fight. I'll be totally honest. I haven't heard the name before. I've never seen Tina Rahimi fight, even in the amateurs. I really cannot offer any analysis or prediction or any anecdotes or tidbits or anything on this fight at all, guys, because I just don't know anything about it. But that's the 6-fight card, guys. So I'd imagine when we had the Charlo Mazudia fight on there too, I reckon what the plan would have been to do the 2 first fights on Fox Sports as the prelims and then move straight into the pay-per-view card. Now it's only a 6-fight card. I wouldn't be surprised if they just scrap the prelims altogether and just put the whole thing on pay-per-view, which, yeah, I wouldn't blame them for that. Look, I've potted No Limit and Foxtel about pay-per-view. Should this fight be pay-per-view? God damn, man, it's pretty good. I'm just going to, I can have a philosophical debate with myself about whether or not it should or shouldn't be a pay-per-view, but God, it's going to be a good card. I'm really, really looking forward to it. So I'm just going to focus on the positives, guys. But there we had it. All right, what's that? There's 40 minutes talking about essentially 5 fights. So sorry, guys. As mentioned, did have a guest lined up for recording this on a Wednesday for Monday. We postponed to Tuesday. Tuesday couldn't happen. And the timing and the availability just couldn't happen for whatever reason. So hopefully I had some good stuff for that guest too. It was going to be a bloody good pod. So hopefully somewhere down the track, an opportunity will present itself and we can revisit that one. But guys, I've got something organized for early next week in terms of a recap after this event as well. A familiar face coming back on, hopefully, and we can get that streak of guests going again. So, guys, that'll be it for the hit out. This is going to be a really fun card. I'm sure you guys are as excited, if not more excited than I am. So, as always, guys, enjoy the fights, and I'll chat to you next week.
Well, let's travel, may add up the change. Living like there's no tomorrow, then tomorrow came.
Going all out.
I was living like there's no tomorrow, then tomorrow came. I got the wake-up call, laughing through the window frame.